Good morning. Welcome to Caffeinate Your Career. Today's topic, show off your best interview. I am your host, the career coach with the most, Jason Hopper. With me today, we got Jill Takamoto here. Today, we actually are changing up. Oh, and there's Allison.
Hi, everybody.
And also, there's Brenda.
Good morning.
We've got a lot of guests today. So a few weeks ago, Allison and I did an episode on how to answer behavioral-based interview questions using the STAR story method. Behavioral-based interview questions are all those like tell me about a time when kind of questions, and they're always good because they are unique to you. And then at the end of the podcast that day, Allison and I both good. We are live. Great.
Yay.
Took me a minute to get there, but we are live and we got 12 people watching. Hey, Rob Polone is watching. My man, Rob. All right, if y'all are in there, get ready because this is going to be a great show. What we're going to do is so at the end of that podcast for the Star Stories, and y'all go listen to the podcast. You can listen to it anywhere where you listen to podcasts. Spotify, Apple, type in Caffeinate Your Career. You'll see me and Allison's smiling face. Go listen to the Star Story episode because today what happened is at the end of that, Allison and I role played answering two different questions for Star Stories, and then we ran out of time. And then Allison had the brilliant idea and said, what if we just did an entire podcast of us and staff answering different Star Stories? So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to ask Allison, Brenda, and Jill the same questions. There's going to be three of them. They're going to answer three different questions. And then at the end, Alice and I will break down whose stories are best, and you guys in the chat, get active. Tell me who you think would be the best candidate to move on to the next round of interviews, if there were a next round of interviews. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Jill. Jill, thanks for being here today.
You bet, Jason.
So Jill, tell me about a time when you needed to get information from somebody who was not responsive. What did you do?
So I worked for a small organization, and we provided professional development to school districts across Texas. And I had just joined the team. There were 4 of us on the team, and 3 of us were brand new. And we were assigned a PD for one of the bigger school districts in Texas, and we were going to present to over 100 school leaders. And so we divided up the different topics for the session, and we had just about a week to prepare. I was assigned school data. So my job was to get all of the school data from the district, all the schools' data from the district. So there were 45 schools, and I needed to present that information and talk about next steps. And it was an hour-and-a-half presentation. So I reached out to the testing coordinator and emailed him and said who I was, what I needed, the timeline, and then I waited. And 2 days went by, and I never heard from him. And I thought, okay, well, let's try a voicemail. So I left him a voicemail and did the same thing. This is who I am. This is what I need. This is the timeline. Another day goes by. And now a little bit of panic is starting to set in.
Right.
Because, I'm going to be in front of 100 plus leaders. And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to email one more time. And this time I included his supervisor. And I kind of framed it as, hey, I know you're busy. It's the start of the school year. My email might have gotten lost. This is who I am. This is what I need. And this is the timeline. Well, I never heard back. And so I started to think about plan B. And so I went on the state website, started pulling all of the data by myself, and it took me hours and hours. And I started to put my presentation together. And then I finally heard from the supervisor. And she said, I will send you the data. Great. Well, I kept working on my presentation. She sent it to me on Sunday evening.
Oh,
and my presentation was Monday morning. So I looked at everything, made sure my numbers were right, and added things that the district wanted us to add. And Monday came, did my presentation. Thankfully, everything went well. In hindsight, I felt like I did my due diligence, and I had a good plan B. And so everything worked out well.
very good. Jill, tell me about settling into your last job. What did you do to learn the ropes?
Oh, well, my most recent experience is coming to JFS
Yes.
and being a part of a new team. I sat in on different sessions with the different coaches, asked questions, listened, and I went on breaks and spent lunchtime together just so I could know people more personally as well, so that we could build that team and that camaraderie. But yeah, really listening and just asking questions.
All right. And describe a time when you saw a problem and you took initiative to correct it.
I was a school principal, and it seemed like problems always found me. So whenever I could, I would, ask questions, gather information. If it was possible, I'd, get a team together so we could discuss and, come up with different solutions. And we'd set a timeline to put things in action and then follow up to be sure if something was working or not working and needed to be adjusted. And then we just would kind of go from there.
All right. Jill, thank you for participating in today's live stream. I do appreciate it.
Anything for you, Jason.
Thank you. I know Jill said before she has a hard time saying no to me. So I appreciate you being here. Next up is Brenda Butnick. Brenda.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for being here today and answering some interview questions. So, Brenda, tell me about a time when you needed to get information from somebody that was not responsive. What did you do?
So I was thinking about a time when I had a team project. So unlike Jill, I had a team that we were all working together. I didn't have to do it all myself. But this one person on the team that got assigned to our team just was totally unresponsive. So what did we do? Well, we reached out, we emailed, we called, and, we didn't know what was going on with that person. It was a local person, so I went to their office and tried to speak to them and find out what was going on. They weren't there, I couldn't reach them. So the rest of the team, we just decided to go on with the project. I mean, that's all you can do. And, we worked closely together. We did our PowerPoints. We did everything we needed to make our presentation. And, worked out really well. That person, just had some personal issues, whatever. It turned out they weren't going to join us. So we successfully completed the project and presented it and worked out really well. We just had to move on,
Very good. And tell me about settling into your last job. What did you do to learn the ropes?
Okay, so that was here.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So this was my current job. So, we have orientation. So that was, a whole list of things we had to go through. And, I had somebody shadowing me with those tasks. And then I just felt like I needed to introduce myself to people, obviously not only on the team, but in the building. So I tried to make a point to, like, if I saw somebody in the hall, and introduce myself and see what they did and where they sat and where their office was, so I could get to have a feel for the organization. Then, of course, there was lots of coaching training, so I completed all of that, and really understood how my position interacted with the organization and how I was going to be benefit and how I was going to be working with my clients. I feel like I settled into a good routine. I built a lot of relationships here in the building. I feel like I can reach out to other departments and feel confident that we can work together. And I totally felt good about knowing how our department, my role, interacts with the rest of the organization.
That's good and kind of important as
yes,
well,
they are
right?
important.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And describe a time when you saw a problem and then you took initiative to correct it.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good one because that's a question that's really important. As a bank manager, the clients, like our large high balance clients our business clients would always come to me, and they had an online banking issue at this particular time, and they had a lot of accounts and different profiles. And they had a problem where they couldn't do what they needed to do online because their accounts weren't all in the same profile and our system didn't allow them to do what they had to do. So they came to me, we called IT support together. They sat there and they walked through their challenges with IT. IT gave them a way to do what they had to do, like through a workaround or whatever it was. And the client was very happy. They went back to their office, they tested it. I followed up with them 24, 48 hours later, and they were happy and they were very satisfied that their frustration was heard and that it was recognized and that we were able to actually take action to show them that we value their business and we could help them.
So excellent customer service.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the goal.
All right, Brenda, thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
today.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And now, my co-host, Allison Harding. Allison?
Hi, everybody, again.
Thank you for being
Hi,
here.
T.
And now everybody's back there watching, so we have a live audience today.
Yeah, if anybody wants to come in live and watch us here, you may.
That would be something.
If anybody would like to come in, let Jason know, and we will arrange it.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And then we may even also use you in the podcast.
Yeah, that could be a thing. So if you want to see and be a part of Caffeinate Your Career in person, let me know. My email is the letter J, Hopper, HOPPER, at jfsdallas.org.
Poor Jason, I throw this stuff at him all the time, and it's like, yeah, sure,
And we're like live, so I can't be like, "What are you doing, Harding?" Like,
excuse me.
But you know what? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That would be super cool. So if you're local and you want to come in and sit and watch the live stream in person, hit me up and let me know. All right. So Allison, tell me about.
I do. I just throw things at people and say, "Oh, can you do this in 5 minutes?"
No, but where you got me right now is you're laughing and it's making me laugh, and I'm trying really hard to get us back on track now. You never know what's going to happen when Allison Harding is in the room. Okay, Allison, tell me about a time when you needed to get information from somebody who was not responsive. What did you do?
I think it's sometimes challenging because everybody's schedules are so busy. And in my last job, we had lots of projects, and they were all team projects. And it's not that people didn't want to do the work, it's just that they got so bogged down doing so many things that they prioritized their own things, not thinking of the rest of the team that was on that project. And so we were in a project, there were 5 of us. 4 of us were working really well. Our schedules were different. This 5th person was non-responsive and also was not getting the information to us. And I actually went over to them and said, "Yeah, what's going on? I know you can do this." And they said, "Yeah, but I'm so busy and it's really stressing me out." And so we figured out how the whole team could help this person do some of his other projects, support him in that way so that he would not be left out and be able to work on this project.
Okay.
By doing that, 1, it showed real team support. 2, it showed everybody in the organization that you can depend on each other. And that's really important when you're working in an organization that has lots of changes going on. And 3rd, we got the project in on time. Everybody could take credit for it. And we showed everybody how well you can work as a team.
Very good. Tell me about settling into your last job. What did you do to learn the ropes?
In my last job, before this one, I was not as computer literate as I thought. I wasn't as computer literate as I should have been. And so when I started and people were throwing things at me, it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so one of the things I did was take an immediate online class to figure out how to get more proficient in Word, which I was using a lot of. Number one. Number two, I went around to other people, introduced myself, and said, hey, can I shadow you? I'd like to see what you're doing. And I was able not only shadow what they were doing on their computer, but also how they talked to people, how they interacted, how they worked with problems, how they solved problems. So it's getting to know everybody and also shadowing them, which people like, to know that they're doing a job well and somebody wants to learn it. And that's how I got to know everybody and learn things.
Okay, very good. And describe a time when you saw a problem and you took initiative to correct it.
So our department here at JFS works really rapidly because we're working with people who are want to know more about their finances and understand them better. And we're also working with people who are looking to change their career or who have lost their job for numerous different reasons. And so one of the challenges we have is with time. We have to manage our time really, really well. And that's not just me, that's our whole department. And because we have so many other projects going on all the time, it's really sitting down and figuring out your priorities, what's important, how it's important, plus keep changing, adding, evolving. And so I like to look at the big picture and figure out what we can do well to help ourselves and the entire community and help people be able to improve their situations all the time.
All right. Thank you.
Those were our behavioral questions.
Okay, so the idea behind that is we're going to show everybody different takes on the same question because everybody has different stories, and ideally, you guys learn by example and how we break this down. So, if you are watching live, tell us who stories you thought were the best. And why? I was the only one on camera. I got Brenda and Jill back there like, hey, what about me? So who did you think had the best stories and that you would move to the next round of interviews if we had?
So it's Allison, Brenda, Jill. Any one of the three of us.
Allison, let's break it down. Let's start with you because you're here right now. Your first question about the information I thought was very good.
Thank you.
And you were very succinct as well. The second question I kept in my head, I'm like, okay, what I wasn't as computer literate. I'm like, in what?
Anything.
And you finally were like, I took a class in Word. So you finally got to it and told me. But as, the interviewer, I had that in my head from the get. Like, what are you talking about? And then the other fear that I had is, are you computer literate now? If I threw something at you, would you be able to, create a presentation, right? So I wanted that information a little bit sooner. You did tell me how you fixed it and corrected it. So that was also very good. I think this last question is like, tell me about a time when you saw a problem and you went to correct it. It was, I think, the one that not stumped everybody, but nobody had a specific thing that they went to go fix. You were talking about the team, and this is what we're going to do as a team. And I, at least in my head, the way that the question was worded was, okay, here is a specific problem. Here's what I did to fix it. Jill did the same thing. Jill's back there nodding her head. Jill, when she answered that question, talked about, teamwork and the whole thing instead of I took it upon myself to fix this specific problem.
So as an interviewer, I don't know if this was part of the program today, maybe you could have asked me more questions to delve into.
Yes.
To show our the people who are watching exactly how it would go.
Yes.
So in all honesty, maybe we didn't answer it exactly the way you wanted it, but then it would have been a perfect time because people hire people they like to get to know me more.
Right. You're 100% correct. But to save time and to make sure that we had everybody, I didn't ask any follow-up questions.
Right.
Even though in my head I did have those follow-up questions. Oh, a very good job, Brenda. I appreciate you coming in today. And but ideally, yes, that we would have extra questions and involved. It's that kind of back and forth. Also, too, because this is a difficult process in coming up with not only your story, but making sure that you're telling your story in about a minute and a half, 90 seconds, as succinctly, leaving room for the interviewer, if they have other questions, to ask and follow-up questions. And if you need help with that, and a career coach here at JFS can help you out creating your behavioral-based Star Story answers. Just call us at 972-437-9950, extension 379. Leave a message, and somebody from the team will get back to you in 24 hours.
We also have mock interview practice.
Yes, we do.
You want to talk about it?
Sure. So we have practice interviews, mock interviews. They are the second and fourth week of each month. It's actually today. They're all full up for today. The next one will be on the week of 4/3, I believe. And if you're interested in doing a practice interview, I've got a whole team of hiring professionals that will do interviews. They are virtual.
Mm-hmm.
So you can participate anywhere in the world. You don't have to be here. So if you're interested in that, email me. I gave my email a minute ago. I'll do it again. It's J, the letter J, Hopper, HOPPER, at jfsdallas.org. They are at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock Central. So if you're interested, let me know. Email me, put mock interview in the subject line and the time that you want to participate. I will need your resume as well. And I'm already building out the next round. I've already got 2 people signed up.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. They go very fast. The spots go very, very quickly. So if you're interested, let me know ASAP.
And to let you know how good they are, one of my clients actually went twice. She
Mhm.
had 2 different people work with her on her interviews and myself afterwards. And she interviewed for a position on Friday, and it was offered to her on... No, she interviewed on Monday, and the position was offered to her on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And so working with people, professionals, is really beneficial for you, especially in interviewing, because it's changed so much. It's not the old, tell me about your job type interview anymore. And that's why these behavioral questions are so important.
Yeah, it's and companies. I just talked to a client last week, and she said every single question that the interviewer asked was a behavioral-based interview question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're doing this episode today, right? Okay, so yes, there should have been some follow-up questions. I just want to make sure that we had time to get to everybody. That was the thing too. So I said, so the question was, tell me about your last job.
Mm-hmm.
That would be this job for you.
My last job would have been
The last job? No.
my last job,
The last
not
job.
this job.
Not this job. Gotcha.
That was the question.
Got your key on the words.
I was an English teacher.
It shows. Okay, what did you think about Brenda's story about somebody that was non-responsive?
I think that all the story, in all honesty, I think the whole team did really well on these. I think behavioral questions are always in the mind of the individual, and they look at them differently, which is why I like the way we did this, and that everybody had their own stories and storylines. So I honestly have to say, I think everybody answered them well. Jill's first answer was a little lengthy. I'm not sure why, but it was a good story and it was a good ending. It was just a little long.
That's funny because
That's the only thing.
That's funny because while she was telling it, I'm like, is she gone over a minute and a half? Because I feel like, is this thing going to end at any point? So it seemed a little bit long.
But again, it was a good story with good detail, so you really understood the situation. And I think in a behavioral question, understanding how, the idea is to understand how someone processes.
Mhm.
And so when a good interviewer, like Jason just did today, would ask the same questions to different people and be able to compare those, and often at many companies, they oftentimes give numerical scores to your answers. And then from those scores, they decide who can go on next. And so it's important that when asked these questions, they are similar to everybody.
So just so everybody knows, everybody had the questions ahead of time so that they were able to prepare. And that's something that you guys should be doing too, is preparing your stories based on specific questions. Because you know those questions are coming. And so then it's like, so Allison, tell me about a time you failed. You're like, oh, that's star story number 4. And you just start talking, right? And this is what, so again, we did this episode the way we did it today, hopefully that you can learn by example. I thought that Brenda's story on how she saw a problem and took initiative to solve it was super great. Because not only did Brenda tell me how she solved the problem, she also showed how she had excellent customer service, right? And she got IT involved, and they ended up coming up with a solution for the customer. Now the customer's happy, and that was a brilliant example, Brent. I loved it so much. You did a great job with that one.
But you're never leaving here, so you'll
Yeah, it's like so good job practicing. I thought that came out really well.
So with star stories, and I don't even know if you said this, it means situation, task, action, result. The result is what they're looking for. How you got there is really important because it's that processing. How do you look at things? How do you prioritize things? How do you work with others? All those things. And so that story, being short and sweet and to the point, as Jason said, can also generate lots of other questions which will build that rapport between you and whomever you're talking to. And the important thing is to remember that have these stories in advance. If you're at home, my suggestion, and you're doing a Zoom call, is not to have, you don't have to have all the stories written out. You have to have certain words that will, when you're asked a question, you'll be able, and if you look at this, my print's really big, okay? So I don't have to do one of these or anything like that. With the big print, you can just look down and boom, oh, I know what I want to say. And there's your story. So you've practiced it, you know it. You're going to put down buzzwords on here that are going to generate what you should say and how you should say it. And because you've practiced it, you know what to do next.
Yeah, I had a client who she wrote down the trigger for the story on a Post-it note and then put them on the monitor.
Okay.
Right.
Oh,
so now she's interviewing, and they ask the question. She's like, "Can look right there." It's like, "Oh, that's story number 4," and then she, knows the the story. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be prepared.
That's that part of it.
And you have to have enough stories, 4 or 5. You're not going to say them all. Again, you're not going to say them all, but they're going to trigger different things. They're going to be able to bring up. There's going to be buzzwords or things that you're going to want to say or talk about.
Yeah, you need a story. So you need at least one story for customer service, time management, adaptability, teamwork,
problem solving.
And problem solving. Those are the 5 categories that you need stories for. And so some of the questions are kind of similar. Right.
Oh, definitely.
So like, and there's like several different ways to ask behavioral based interview questions. So it's like I asked, what is it that, or tell me about a time you saw a problem and how you solved it. Brenda's like, oh, that would be your customer service story, right? Because that's what you did.
So the other thing with star stories, and this is just my own opinion, I think you might agree with me, is try and pick stories that you've done more recently versus 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when why don't we talk about things that are recent? Because I want to know how you're working now, not how you did it 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, I think that's correct because it's the most recent experience,
Mhm.
and really employers are only looking to see how you solve problems today. How we did things back in the day is definitely different.
Right. And some of the questions are really not good.
So, like, what do you mean?
So, as an example, when one of my sons was interviewing, he was asked, how many pennies does it take to get to the top of the Empire State Building?
That's what, yeah, right. Those are those kinds of questions, like call curveball questions, right? Because one of the reasons that the interviewer asks those kinds of questions is you're not prepared to answer it.
Mhm.
You're prepared to answer. So, Allison, tell me about a time when you had a difficult.
Exactly.
You should have practiced that answer. But when you say, "Hey, how many basketballs can fit on a bus?"
Right. Oh.
Uh-huh.
But that's not the right answer.
Right. What they're looking for is, can you think on your feet? Can you ration it out?
So we had warned Ryan that there could be some of these types of questions. And so when it was asked of him, he sort of sat there for a minute, not a minute, but for a while. And he said, I'm not sure exactly how many pennies it would take, but what I would do is figure out how many inches tall the Empire State Building is, how many pennies fit into an inch, and then figure it out from there.
Sounds logical to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another question that people used to ask and still do sometimes. What kind of car do you drive? So the questions asked, they don't really care what kind of car you drive. They care about how you talk about it. Oh man, I've got this 2000 Jeep that has 250,000 miles on it, and I've had it the whole time, and I love this car, blah, blah, blah. Again, it shows the enthusiasm or the excitement, or, oh, I drive a Dodge. Oh, okay. So again, you have to understand what's trying to be asked behind the question.
Right. It's the same reason they ask behavior-based interview questions. This is like as you tell your story, is it something that you are actually excited about and telling the story and how you solve the problem?
Mm-hmm.
The car question would throw me off because I am not a big car guy. I just want I need a vehicle to get me from A to B.
But that's what you would say. I drive a whatever.
And Cooper.
I don't love driving, but I get from A to B, and that car is really dependable and reliable. So now you have your story. It's dependable, it's reliable, and it gets me, exactly where I need to go.
It's also paid off, so I don't have a car. That's one less expense I have too.
Can I say something off?
Yes,
camera?
Jill.
I wonder if questions are based on the type of position you're applying for as well. If you're going for a creative type of position, the questions might be a little more thought-provoking, creative, right? That sense.
Definitely.
If you're going for kind of a black and white type of thing, maybe we don't want you to have that far out kind of, So I think it depends as well.
Yeah.
Like I've interviewed hundreds of teachers, potential teachers. I don't know if I would ask unless it was a math teacher.
Right.
So I think it would depend on the position that you're applying for.
Absolutely right. You bring up a really good point. And the challenge is that in HR, sometimes there's just a sheet of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter who you are, you're asked these questions. And so the answers can be so varied. And if they're numerically judged, it makes it really difficult and unfair, to be honest with you. Whereas, like you're saying, if I'm applying for a project as a project manager, or I'm applying as a math teacher, or I'm applying as an accountant, those questions should be geared toward those different types of jobs and skills. But that oftentimes doesn't happen.
No, because the person that is doing the interviewing doesn't know how to interview. But that's another problem. That's a whole other. But so to your point though, and what I have been doing with clients, especially when they have they're like in a very niche industry or role. Like I have a client that I'm working with who is a change manager. So what they do is very specific. So what I did to help prepare for this interview was I went to ChatGPT
Of course you do.
and typed in list interview questions for a change management position. And it immediately listed 12 questions, printed them out, handed them to my client, go practice that, right? Because if that's what they could be asking you. And the interview went well, and she got the job. So
he brings up a really good point as ChatGPT, and he uses it probably more than anybody in the department, I think, most likely.
probably.
So with that being said, there are things that you can learn. Do not use ChatGPT for your resume. Do not. Just letting you know that.
Well, it's only as good as what you get and put in. And I have seen some that looked fine, but it was written basically for the applicant. So it was the computer writing it for the computer. It was ATS compliant for sure. And then I saw one that was just a catastrophe. And then the other part of that is companies are now starting to use software that will that can, I guess, ferret out resumes that are written from AI. And the other part, yeah, for sure. This is happening right now, today. It was actually one of the things that we predicted when we did the trends for the new year, is that not only will things be automated, or a lot more things be automated, but companies will be using different tools, and that is one of the tools that they're using. The other problem with that is when you have AI write your resume, it does not sound like you. And you need to go back and write it so that it can be a nice base on a skeleton, but you need to go back and change and put some meat on the bones to make it sound like you.
So Jason brings up a really good point. You have to be writing the resume. ChatGPT said you're feeding it information. From that information, they're putting together what you fed it, but it's not really you. It's just little tidbits of you. And so
it's the data. It's the data is what it is. And that's not going to work. It's the same reason why I talk to clients and I tell them, I am not going to write your resume. I don't know anything about you or your career. But if you come in with just a bare bones skeleton type, like I worked here and did this, I will wordsmith it all day with you and make it sound robust and where an employer wants to pick up the phone and call, right? And I love doing that. I would do that all day with clients. It's just fun for me. And I would like, okay, you wrote this sentence. Tell me what that actually did. What were you doing actually? And then they would tell me like, okay, so, and then I would work it through.
So you have to do that same thing when you get something from ChatGPT. You have to look at it and say, oh, this is almost me. And then change it so that it is you.
That's right. So, Allison, we are about at time.
Okay.
Hey, we got like more people, so it's a fun question for the day. When was the last time you saw some live music?
Sunday, we went to the Simon and Garfunkel story.
Oh.
And it was a musical, and it was awesome.
Okay.
So Sunday night.
Jill?
Last weekend, we were in Nashville. Heard live music all weekend.
You saw a lot of live
really
music.
saw live music.
She went
Yeah.
She does win.
Brenda?
2 weeks ago at a tribute concert for a 70s band. Very fun. We love live music.
What band was it?
It was called Champagne Yacht Club
Okay.
at Legacy West. Yeah, it was just 70s, all 70s. Very cool.
This past weekend, we went to the truck yard and got some food, and they had a live, not a band, just somebody playing guitar, but it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's nice. I can't believe we all have seen live music
Yeah.
recently.
Within a couple of weeks.
In 2 weeks, we're seeing a Fleetwood tribute band. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully this has been it was definitely a different and certainly fun episode of Caffeinate Your Career. Next week, you know what we're doing next week?
No, what are we doing next week?
How to pivot into a new position. Because if y'all are working and you don't like your job, you might want to do something else. Allison and I are going to tell you how to get out of what you're doing right now and into something else. And that's next week. In the meantime, y'all have a great week. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a great week.